just before we start the show, I want to take an opportunity to invite you to join me for the Podfluence Weekly newsletter, which is available both on LinkedIn and through the official newsletter channel. Now, if you are on LinkedIn and it's easier for you to follow there, then please just click on the link in the show notes, which will take you straight to Podfluence on LinkedIn, where you can subscribe for free and get weekly updates on Podfluence articles as well as episodes. If you would like to subscribe to the full newsletter, where you'll get additional materials and, as my little incentive to you, my pre-podcast guest checklist for you to use when you're appearing on podcast shows so that you can be fully prepared every single time, then please click the link to the official newsletter in the show notes. Hope to see you there. Let's get on with the show. Welcome to Speaking of Influence. We are live at the moment with a virtual conference that we're going to be having a chat with an incredible speaker, a speaker trainer, someone who has taken many times to the TEDx stage, and he trains other people in being able to do that as well. So if you have questions for my guest, by all means, post them into the comments box. We'd love to hear them. So my guest is Peter Hopwood. We'll be speaking to Peter just after the titles. Welcome to Speaking of Influence, the podcast for speakers and professionals or anyone who wants to present with impact. Hosted by presentation persuasion coach John Ball. Remember to like and subscribe. If you're thinking of starting a podcast, there couldn't be an easier way to get started than getting started with Buzzsprout. They have all the tools and resources you need for starting a podcast and getting it out to all the major podcasting networks. Check out the link in the show notes and get your podcast started today. Peter, welcome to Speaking of Influence. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here, and I can't wait to get stuck in and unpack all the things we're going to unpack, whatever they are.
Yeah, hopefully we may even get a few people come and join us live as well on the line. If we do, if you're live and getting to watch us, please do post comments and questions, especially for Peter, into the chat box, and we'll get to them a bit later on. Right now, though, I wanted to talk to you particularly about what it is you do, because, like myself, you are a presentation skills coach. So if you can share a little bit with us about who you do that with and what for, that would be great.
Absolutely. I mean, John, we share the same profession. We do the same thing, slightly different, perhaps, with different clients and the way we do what we do. But generally, essentially, I work with companies, with individuals, and I literally help them to define, craft, and deliver their stories with impact. So that could be a keynote speaker, a CEO who has to present in front of his whole team, his whole company, for example, or it could be a TEDx speaker who's got a TEDx talk coming up and needs to craft his story, or maybe down the line he's already got his story kind of defined and he knows what he's about to say, but he just needs that little bit of a push and kind of to define things in the right direction, push things in the right direction. Or it could be teams that need to kind of show up well online and make sure they're doing everything they should be doing to sound good, look good, and get their messages across in the right way in this virtual world that we're all living in. So a whole different collection of ideas, but generally, essentially, showing up with more impact, presence, and getting your messages across in the right way and how you want to be perceived.
Well, I definitely want to get to discussing some of the how you do that with people in a while. But first, I want to find out, is speaking something you've always done or something you ended up moving into?
Part of my role, my job years ago, if we go back 25 years ago, something like that, which is a long time ago, I worked in hospitality. I think you did as well, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Yeah, hospitality. I worked for Disney in Paris. I worked for a large British tour operator, and that gave me the chance to travel and work in about 6 different countries. And in that role, a lot of it was actually presenting the results, presenting yourself, presenting the great things you can get up to as on holiday. So it's a skill that I enjoyed. It's a skill that I felt I was well, I wasn't always great, but I don't think I'm great now. But but essentially, it was something that I
Modesty
really
kicks in.
enjoyed. Some of the resorts, it was going really, really well, and so commission was good. Some places I did it in, wasn't so well. So, but I quickly realised you can fine tune the way you come across, fine tune your voice, what you say, how you say something, and certain phrases would influence people to like you more or like what you're sharing and what you're selling more. And that really intrigued me. And so fast forward to today, literally I think it's about 10 years ago, I opened up my own company, presentation skills, pitching, and that moved on to presenting at conferences as a host, as an MC, and as I say today, all about TEDx speaking, TEDx coaching, and helping people to really define the stories they want to share.
Fantastic stuff. Yeah, I never really thought about it until you were saying that. I'm thinking, well, did I really? I was in hospitality, but was I doing any presentations? So I'm thinking, well, you could count in-flight announcements on the plane. That would be the
What
it
were
was a
you
kind
doing?
of presentation.
What were
I was
you
a flight
doing?
attendant. I was
No way,
I
really?
was for British Airways for nearly 12
Okay,
years.
listen. That is absolutely okay. So flight attendants, when you're on the plane, you probably know this already, but as a passenger, passengers' eyes are always on the flight attendants. So whatever you do, your movement, how you interact with your colleagues as you move past a colleague, and you just brush past them, or a smile, or a wink to them, or what you say to them as you're pouring the coffee and the tea, or the drinks, whatever you're doing, people are watching you all the time, and your voice on that plane means absolutely everything. That really, really defines the feeling. I've thought about this a lot because I've done a lot of flying in the past, not so much now, but there's a whole that's a whole new ball game of influence when you're actually on the plane, and the things people say, like the pilot, his voice, often low, often really difficult to understand because it's quite croaky. There's often
There
a
can
lot of
be some,
interference. Yeah. But often, that voice of the pilot is there to really reassure everybody, really to get people to feel naturally we're going in the right direction.
I can think of a few instances where that wasn't the case, but yeah.
I bet you have got lots of. You could even do
that would
whole
be another podcast
just on flying,
easily.
communication, and how everything comes across. But certainly many times I've actually heard lots of flight attendants read, because you have those that are maybe new or not too familiar with the kind of protocol and what you have to say. They're reading it off, and you can hear they're reading it.
Sure.
Or maybe English is not their first language, which is fine. But when it gets to a point where it's where you can't understand what they're saying, you might say, okay, it doesn't really matter because no one's listening anyway. But I think it does. I think all these small things really add to the whole atmosphere and the flavor and the feeling that someone has, certainly on the plane, where you get a lot of people who are anxious. I'm sure you've dealt with lots of people who have the fear of flying.
Indeed.
Or maybe they're worried about something, or that the passengers have so much different. We all have different things we bring to that plane, and our states are all different. Some of us are excited, some of us are scared, really fearful. Some of us are just anxious about what's going to be on the other side when they get there. So all these emotions are running wild. They could be. And it's really the communication and what people hear on that plane during that flight, I think can really influence how they feel.
I can remember being turned around halfway to San Diego on 9/11, and
no, really,
and we didn't know where we were going to be able to land. All this kind of stuff. Passengers starting to get a bit upset. The pilot was incredible. Who I don't remember his name, unfortunately, but it was his soothing voice and his calm manner that not only kept the crew calm, but also kept the passengers calm as well, and kept us very informed of everything that's going on. And issue like that was super important to be able to sort of say what was going on without giving much detail and without having everyone panicking. But it's definitely stressful situations. I'd never thought of it in those terms, Peter.
Absolutely. There are so many things. For example, when there's a delay, which can mean a lot for a lot of people, right? It could be just a half an hour delay could be really frustrating. For others, it might not mean so much. Maybe they're on holiday, they're going home, it doesn't really matter. But for others, it might really mean something. So when there's a delay and when passengers finally get to the plane, the words, we're sorry this happened, or we apologize that you've had to wait. But what we're going to do now, we're going to do our best to make up the time and try to get to our destination as soon as we can. Something like that. So an apology, and a calm apology and a sincere apology in your voice can mean all the difference. So I think there's a whole load of communication in terms of travel, which maybe we can jump into on another day, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was certainly a place for me where I learned that you can get away with saying almost anything with a smile on your face. But it was a good experience. I want to get to. I mean, it's great that your experience in hospitality felt really set you up for that. At what point did it become like, okay, well, speaking is my thing? Why did you want to actually specifically work in teaching other people to do this?
It's really simple. Simply, it was something that I felt, as I said earlier on, it's something that I felt I was relatively good at. I felt I felt more confident in myself about who I was. And I think the skills that I learned and I was developing at the time sort of said to myself, well, hey, actually, I feel better. And to help other people do the same, just by giving them some ideas, because there's a whole range of things you can do that can help someone. You can give them tasks to do, and that will change their behavior, and then they'll see straight away a change. Or it could be just empathizing with them in the same sense of you've gone through the same thing and they feel the same, and then that helps them feel like, actually, I'm not alone. I can, he actually felt the same way I feel right now, and there's no reason why I can't do better. Because at the end of the day, as you well know, speaking is, it's a skill set. It's a skill set, and if you can learn it, everybody can learn to do better. Okay, some people at the end of the scale are really talented at it. Some people at the other end of the scale really struggle with it. But at the end of the day, I think if you do these tasks and you do them often, and then in your mindset you start to really believe you can do these things, and often when we do them, when we take action, that's a sign, that's a signal for ourselves to say, actually, I can do it. So doing these things, doing the actions can mean so much.
Yeah, I know. For me, on my journey, the road to becoming a speaker, let alone a speaker trainer, was one of the biggest personal development journeys that I've had. Because it pushed me so hard, and it pushed through a lot of the insecurities, which still come up sometimes. The imposter syndrome still strikes at certain times, and who am I to be doing this sort of stuff? And whatever other insecurities we may have about how we look, how we sound, anything like that, it's all still there. But when the wife are doing this stuff gets big enough, when it's that important to you, and it's not just about you, then that can really drive you and accelerate you faster and help other people to have those kinds of transformations. I would say that I've probably dealt with more people having fear of speaking than fear of flying, which is kind of interesting, because they're both the same sort of thing, really, of ultimately catastrophizing and thinking what's going to go wrong.
And I think I really do feel, and I hope you, well, I imagine you'd agree with me as well, that this whole idea, the whole notion of the fear of public speaking is actually not as fearful as actually it seems. So the energy, the worry, the thoughts, the those anxious feelings, all of that and then when you actually do speaking, when you speak in public for someone who's nervous, it doesn't balance up. There's too much worry, and there's too much, because everybody doesn't want to be put in the spotlight. We all imagine this thing of, it's really fearful, it's really tough, it's a real challenge, and for many it is, okay, but I think there's too much of that, and we kind of convince ourselves that it is actually a really tough thing to do, when in fact the fear of public speaking, and again, I think you'll agree with me with this as well, from the many clients that I know you've had during your career, it's actually not the public speaking that's the fear. It's all those other things that we have in our lives every day. The fear of rejection, so the fear of going up there in the spotlight and people not accepting you, the fear of not being valued for what you say, the fear of not being listened to, the fear of being judged, and somebody's gonna think,
I think the fear of being shamed as well, the public shame stuff.
So all of these things, which are completely normal, the only difference is you're doing it in the spotlight. You're doing it in a format where all eyes are on you, right? So that's the only difference. And then I think once you start to think to yourself, actually, being judged is part of growing up, is part of developing, is part of every human on this planet. Some of us are good at that, some of us are not good at dealing with judgment. But the more for me, certainly, it's a question of, I often think to myself, okay, people have the right to judge me, and people have the right not to like me.
Sure.
People have the right not to accept me and reject me. So the more you kind of get to grips with that, and I think as well, the more you get, as we grow older, we get more rejection. We get more, or most of us do. I don't know. Well, I do.
I think.
You know what I mean? We get.
I do. I really do.
We learn to deal with all these kind of negative feelings that are kind of normal for us to go through in life, and so by focusing on one of those things, which is the speaking in public, letting people judge you, but knowing that you've actually got something to say and something of value, then that kind of overrides the judgment feeling. So if you've got nothing to say,
for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that these are all really important points, and I know for me, one of the things that got me through this was getting to a point for myself where it didn't really matter whether other people liked me or not, because and now I think that it's a good thing. If there are people who don't like me, that's a really good thing, because not everybody should like you. Like, if everyone can like you, no one's really going to love you. So because you're kind of bland, you like the color beige, but as a person, and so rather than being bland, be something that stands out, that people are either going to love or hate. Be willing to be that bit polarizing. That doesn't mean, no, I'm not saying you have my permission to go out there and be a complete a-hole, but be willing to just not try and be liked by everyone, and know that that's a good thing. I think that was super important. When I gave myself permission to do that, that was huge.
Yeah, I think the idea of, of some of us are kind of a real people pleasers, where we it's difficult for us to say no. We always want to, do what we can for people, and so we not say. I'm not saying that people like that are just trodden over or just let people kind of take advantage of them, but certainly if that's the kind of person you are, really thinking about what other people think of you is not necessarily a good thing for when you're in the spotlight.
If that's what's going through your head, it's not good.
Not good.
Not a good time for it. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I can think there are still situations where I definitely would get very nervous, and still do before going out and doing a talk, like competition speeches for like Toastmasters, things like that. I do still get the nerves, the heart rate starts pumping, all that kind of stuff. For a TED talk, definitely, I would be feeling it, and I know what to do to help me deal with that. But I know that I would probably have some trembles at the very least going on. But you've done this. Tell me a bit about your TEDx experience.
Yeah, no. So I did it like a long time ago, 2016, I think it was. And you know what? If I had to do another one, if I'm going to do another one, I mean, I won't do it as it wasn't. Not that I'm saying I was bad, but there are, lots of things that, and we always look back and we can always be better. But yeah, I felt nervous because I knew that this was high stakes. This is something that's going to go online. It's going to stay there. For many, it almost defines them in it. But I think it's a wrong thing that a TEDx talk can define you. Even if it's a good TEDx talk, right. I don't think that's the right format to define anyone, really, because today we see a lot of people come to me or consult with me before they go and apply for a TEDx talk. And the first thing I ask is, why do you want to do it? Why do you want to be a TEDx speaker? And I hear too often I hear the same kind of phrases. Yeah, it's my dream to be a TEDx speaker. It's my lifelong dream to be on a stage and be a TEDx speaker. But the thing is, it's just 15 minutes of a talk is actually pushed out. And there are loads of great speeches online. There are lots that are kind of mediocre, but there are so many that are not that great. And so letting that define you is not a good thing. People who are, again, I've always said it, anybody can be a really good speaker to a global level of a TEDx talk, or even better. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, your background. At the end of the day, if you've got, you can connect, you can say the right things, share the right story, have the right narrative, deliver in a really strong way. It doesn't matter who you are, your title, what you've done in the past. But so many people kind of like, they've done a TEDx speech, TEDx talk, and they use that as a way to really try to boost their credibility. Now, TEDx really does help because it attracts attention. People want to see it, and okay, in terms of the world's population of speakers, not everyone has done a TEDx speech.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say is, don't let a TEDx speak define you in any way. If it's good, it's great, and use that in your own way to your advantage. But if you want to be a TEDx speaker, ask yourself why you want to do that. Is it because you want not the fame, but you want the attraction, you want the credibility, and you want to stand out? Or is it because you really have a message which you feel people are going to listen to, change how they think, be inspired, do something different, or just get people after that 15, 16, 17 minutes or so to feel actually, that I feel differently about something. Because if it's that, then go ahead. If it's the other one, start thinking about, your message, because at the end of the day, it's all about the message.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because as a goal, I know many new speakers even want to go for that. That's my dream. That's my goal. I hear it all the time from people in Toastmasters clubs as well, and also up and down the country, all around the world. People are getting into the World Championship of public speaking this year once again within Toastmasters, and I had an interesting message from Darren LaCroix, who won back in 2001, who I've had on the show as well. And Darren was saying, great that you want to win the World Championship of Public Speaking. Great that you want to have a TED Talk or a TEDx Talk. But, is it realistic for everybody? Or is it even the right thing for everyone? Is that the right goal? And do you really understand what's entailed in this and what you're going to get out of it? Because I think people maybe think it's going to be like winning the X Factor or Britain's Got Talent or something like that they're gonna have their career made. Well, we know that most of those people don't, unless they really work hard. Some of them will take off and some of them get forgotten about. It's the same with the World Championship of Public Speaking. It's probably the same with TEDx. But that's like your calling card. That's probably one of the first places that people might ever encounter you through a video, because it goes public. So it's like, you really better be damn well prepared for it if you're going to get on that stage, I think.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Spot on. Make that, which I did prepare, but I look back now and I think I could do so much better. I could have done so much better. But yeah, it's glamorizing it as something which is, almost like that 15 minutes of fame. If it's really powerful, yeah. But if it isn't, there are a lot of people that are fooled by, not fool's the wrong word, but that see TEDx speeches and the level, the benchmark is a TEDx talk, regardless of really who it is and regardless of actually the content. So if you've done a TEDx talk, you've made it. But thinking on the other side of thinking more about the difference you're going to make with your content, what you're going to say, how is it going to change people's opinions of a topic, getting them to think differently, feel differently about something, and making a change. If that's the real goal, then it should work.
Yeah. What are some of your favorites, other than your own? What are some of your favorite TED or TEDx talks that you probably think, you should check that out if you want to get a good idea of someone doing it right?
Listen, I mean, you put me on the spot. I don't know. I mean, there are so many. There are so many in all. I would suggest. Actually, there's Mark Bowden. I'm sure you know who he is. A great speaker, trainer, a coach, body language expert. I think he's not number one body language expert on the planet. A great talk. I think he's done a few maybe, but check him out. But there's so many. There isn't anyone particular. I would say definitely he or she, looking at him, watching what he or she's done is gonna take you forward. But I just, there's so many different ones as well. So you don't necessarily have to have, be flamboyant or have a really strong story. You don't necessarily have to have that, and you don't have to have all that energy. You can just be you can be calm. You can have focused energy. You can, some people bring in props, for example, when they begin. Some people shock people right at the beginning with their opening statements. I mean, there are so many different ones. Maybe I think of a couple and send them over, and you can put them in there.
Yeah,
in the
please
comments
do.
when this. There are a few, but I just can't think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean,
mine. Don't look at mine.
there are definitely some. There are definitely some I've seen over time. One of my favorites actually is a friend of mine, Julian Treasure. He has a great talk on
how
to speak so people listen.
Yeah, that's right. Julian,
I've known Julian for quite a long time, and very nice guy. And hopefully we'll get him on the show at some point as well. But him and I'm trying to think. Sir Ken Robinson as well. One of my favorites. Sadly, Sir Ken died last year, but definitely one of my favorite ever TED Talks. But these are TED Talks. There is a difference between TED and TEDx, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's TED Talks are really like this. I would say it's bigger, stronger, more renowned cities. Higher profile speakers, perhaps. TEDx, pretty much anywhere around the world. We take, for example, Croatia here. There are many different TEDx organizers who've managed to get a license. So you've got the TEDx Zagreb, TEDx University of Zagreb. I think there's a TEDx Women as well. And so if you can manage, if you're lucky enough to arrange everything and get a license, anybody can do that.
Yeah. When it comes to this, then you said already, ideally it should be go for this if you've got a great message you really want to share with people, rather than as an accolade or a feather in your cap. It's better to be thinking about it for what it can do for people, which I think is generally true in public speaking and presentation work. Anyway, I think that's a great way to approach all these things. But maybe even the Toastmasters World Championship is probably still a great way to approach that as well, and make it it's not so much about you. What, in your opinion, are the people who are going to benefit the most from taking to those kinds of stages?
You mean the speakers who become a TEDx speaker? What are they going to benefit from? Yeah. They're going to. Okay. Naturally, the attraction, the credibility, people are going to see you. You can become a TEDx speaker, and that's, again, it's in your profile, and you put it on LinkedIn, and that's you. But ultimately, I think it's about when all the eyes are on you, knowing how to keep everything calm and keep everything moving well, and dealing with that whole process of putting your talk together. 15 minutes. Or 18 minutes, or sometimes actually that's the maximum, but you can have, a lot of people do it 12 or 10. In fact, the ones that are shorter, they often get higher number of views naturally. So keeping it shorter is even better. So that whole process of an idea, a message, a story, a company story, your own story, struggle, achievement, whatever it is, bringing that right down and creating something that gets people's attention, ideally get people's attention and keeps them with you in that short amount of time, is a skill. So once you've done that, often people who I've worked with afterwards, they've used the skills, they've used the ideas, they've used the kind of process that we worked on together, and adapted that and used that for their next presentation, which might be 20 minutes. It might be half an hour. It might be 60 minutes, whatever it is. Yeah. But condensing things down is a skill. And the more we do that in our communication, the better. Certainly now, when everything is within this square virtual box, people's attentions are a lot shorter. People looking at a screen, anytime we look at a screen, it needs to attract our attention. So watching TV, watching Netflix, whatever it is, it's all done, films, movies, all done to attract our attention. Now, if we're not doing that in some way on a screen, then people are going to tune off. So condensing things, using a process of getting your ideas together and sharing them in a sharp, condensed, snappy, compelling, captivating way, which is what a TEDx talk really should be, with a very clear message, then that can only be of benefit to you as a speaker, as a presenter, and somebody who shares their messages.
Yeah, that's the thing I think you always have to keep in mind is, if there was just one thing that people took away from your talk or presentation, what do you want it to be? And does your presentation deliver? And I think that's something I think about every single time that I give a talk or a presentation, is that if there was just one thing that people remember from this, what do I want it to be? And to make sure that gets remembered above everything else.
Yeah, and often when you're working with somebody, just simply getting somebody else's opinion, just getting somebody else to see what you've done can really help. Because when you're in it, as you know, I don't know, if you're writing a book or writing a song or poem or working on something, you're fully in it and spending a lot of time and energy and hours to get it right. Often we can get lost or just get sidetracked in a way that makes things more complicated. So often letting other people in on the talk a little bit. So let's say somebody's put together their talk. We're at the kind of final stages, and they're kind of ready to perform and to deliver. Often it's a good idea just to get other people to come on in and just give their opinion. Doesn't mean you have to listen to it. Doesn't mean that they're right.
Sure.
But it's a nice way to just get others to try to get them to feel the same things that you want them, that maybe me and the client have been working on trying to achieve. So getting other people to listen and hear is a good thing.
Yes, because quite often what you want to communicate isn't always what gets communicated, isn't always what gets understood. So it's always a good thing to check in on that as much as possible. But I really liked what you're saying about really making sure that you condense things, make things shorter to have more impact. We see that now online with online courses, with this show, right? I mean, I started off doing this show an hour and a half, 2-hour episodes. People don't want to make that kind of time commitment, unless you're Tim Ferriss or Joe Rogan or someone like that. People don't really want to commit that amount of time to a podcast. So, even for me, I'm trying to keep it around 30 to 45 minutes now for the show, and still get the valuable conversation in that I can happily keep going for much longer, because I love asking questions and having these conversations with people. But finding those ways to deliver still good value with a bit less.
Absolutely. So condensing things down, making it short. I mean, I think you've started to put some of your content, I think, as a podcast, and they're short. I think they're 5 minutes long, something like that.
The daily shows. Yeah.
I mean, they're short, they're sharp, they're bite size, they're digestible.
Yeah, they're getting traction as well. They've been up online for about 2 weeks, and they're already getting the downloads and traction. So it's incredible.
Fantastic. So there you go. So the shorter, often the better. But again, always remembering to give as much value as you can in that short, sharp space.
So let's move on to something that I do definitely want to get to whilst we have our time together. Let's say I come to you and I say, okay, Peter, I really want to do this TEDx talk. I've got a slot to do this and kind of know what I want to talk about. How do we get started? What do we do?
Okay, so this whole period at the beginning is really, for me and the client and the speaker, potential speaker, to really define lots of different things. So to define, okay, what is the message? What is that message you want to share? Why do you want to share that message? Who's that message for? How do people see? How do you think people perceive you as a speaker, or how do you think they'll perceive you when you stand on that stage and share your messages? Yeah. What's the tone? What kind of tone do you want to hit? Is it you want something? Do you want to shock them? Do you want to emotionally get under their skin and get them to think differently about something? Do you actually want them to do something? Do you actually want to, as a call to action, to actually make them do something? Often, in fact, surprisingly, TEDx talks don't have a call to action, and that's okay. Often it's just about thinking about something or getting people to reflect upon something that relates to them through what people share. Yeah, a normal presentation, a workshop or whatever, a talk, a call to action. Yeah, do something, think differently, do this. But a TED talk doesn't necessarily have to do that. It's more about the emotional engagement of what you're sharing and the story. Often the story. Yeah. So a lot of the period at the beginning is mostly about me really getting to know that person, really getting to know their story on how they see things. And often their idea at the beginning is actually we kind of go off at a tangent because their idea of the story and the messages they want to share are okay. But just through speaking to me and me asking the right questions, hopefully the right questions, and getting some answers that they haven't even thought of, can often take us on a different path to a better message and a better part of the story.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a kind of, I wouldn't say brainstorming, but it's a period of us getting to know each other, but more really me getting to know the client and really how and why he wants to share his messages.
Yeah. It's to me, one of the most important things in speaking, and whether it be on a TEDx stage or anywhere, is that ability to edit down what you're going to say and to really hone your message. So it sounds like you were great at asking the kinds of questions that help people to say what's really important here, what's superfluous, what they don't need to have in here, and doesn't really fit with the tone or the message of what you're trying to deliver. We can actually get rid of all this. Let's focus on this bit, and that takes us where I think it's very easy when you're in it or when it's your stuff to not be able to see the clearer picture. Sometimes the thing of not being able to see the wood for the trees is that you can't see the whole landscape of or the whole ecosystem that your talk's going into. But somebody outside of that who has a bit of an insight into the ecosystem that you're going into can and say, okay, these are things you need to be considering and asking yourself these questions. Is this what you really want to put out there in this way? When it comes to stories, I mean, can you really have a good TED Talk without a good story, do you think?
Okay, so storytelling, if you look at it as a way of sharing real things that have happened to you or other people with emotion. So things that have happened with some kind of emotion. And those two things are what people want to listen to. That essentially that's what story is. That's what stories are. They're things that have happened.
Right.
And maybe the consequences of those things create an emotion or an emotion during that time, and then what's going to happen next. And so all these, when I say emotion, I mean, it could be anything: achievement, success, frustration, disappointment, something dramatic, could surprise. So you look at it that way, and that's really what story is. All anything with that in it gets people's attention, because we want to listen. Our ears prick up when we hear something about somebody else. Gossip, that's what gossip is. Right. Gossip. So celebrity magazines, gossip magazines, all these things on YouTube of what people are doing, divorcing and having sex with him or her, whatever it is. These are stories about other people, and we want to know what other people are doing, how they're feeling. The drama, the good things, the bad things. Often the bad things we want to know. Yeah. It's not us. It makes us feel better. So the answer to your question is a TED Talk. Can you have a TED Talk without a good story? No. Because it's all about that emotion and things that have happened and the emotion. So it's really about that emotional side. I know I keep saying that word, but the more should be done, and more should be, a real high focus should be put on that emotional feeling and getting people to relate to you or relate to the message and put themselves in that position. How do they feel about things? And if you could manage to do that through the power of story, certainly at the beginning of your talk, getting people to feel the same as you felt, or they can imagine how it feels. Already you're getting people inside to kind of nod. They're kind of nodding mentally and agreeing with you. So the more agreement you get, especially at the beginning of your speech, even though they don't have to say, yes, I agree, or they don't even have to nod, just inside they're like agreeing with what you're saying or can relate to it. it pulls you along. That's what I mean. You had not so long ago a gentleman, a comedian, I think. Is that right? On your
Quite a
show,
few.
you've had.
There's been a few.
It's John Ball's comedy show, comedy on airline comedy. There you go, 2 more. But
that might be my stand-up routine. Yeah.
Have you ever done stand-up, by the way?
No, but I really would like to. Yeah, not yet.
So yeah, comedians do that all the time. Getting us to feel, especially observational comedy, getting us to really relate to things that have happened, and they can put themselves in that position and see somebody else forfeit the outcome, the negative outcome often, which is funny.
Yeah. One of the reasons for having so many comedians come on, and humorous speakers as well, not just professional stand-ups, but has been because many of them are incredibly good at storytelling, and they're very good at that emotional connection and the pathos and stuff, and bringing people in. I would say in terms of that, my favorite guest in terms of storytelling so far, at least, has been a guy called Matthew Dix, who won he's won the Story Slam, the Moth Story Slam in the US multiple times. And I think he was telling me that 46, 47 wins of the Moth Story Slam, and the Grand Slam at least 6 times, I think. Incredible storyteller, and can take you on a real emotional roller coaster. But I think those and comedians, like, they're great people to learn from when it comes to the art of storytelling, because they won't just get you to laugh. They will also have the contrast in there of something that will make you feel a bit bad or sad or different, and then slam in something that's absolutely hilarious for that greater impact. It's masterful. Honestly, it's masterful, and that's one of the reasons to have been speaking with so many of them. As I think it was Jeremy Nicholas who was on the show a little while ago, who was saying, if you want to get paid as a speaker, you have to make them laugh as well. So.
Jeremy Nicholas, is he? He worked for the BBC a long time ago. Right? Yeah. Great guy. Great. I don't know him.
Really great guy.
I never met him.
He kept the show going even when my live feed dropped out. He started telling everyone a story, so that was quite incredible. So look, we're going to start drawing things to a close, but there's many more things to talk about, and maybe come back and have another conversation. We'll talk about airlines and hospitality and all that kind of stuff.
I would love that. That would be great. Just to talk about communication, airlines, planes, and the way the travel industry communicates would be really interesting. So
it would be an interesting topic.
From a point of view of somebody who's worked for Thompson Holidays so many years ago, 7 countries altogether, and then I quit, and then as a coach and an MC over the last 10 years, it's mainly traveling and flying. But I would love to talk about, to share insights and make people maybe aware of those small subtle things that are going on around us. So the next time we go on a plane, whenever that will be in the future, if that will ever happen again, so more aware of the subtleties and why people say things and do things while traveling.
Yeah, I might have to get my ex-crew friend Mandy in on that as well. She's been doing radio presenting for years and has now set up her own radio station for cabin crew now that she's left the airline stuff. Yeah, incredible. So yeah, that could be a fun discussion. I want people to be able to find out more about you. So what's the best place for people to come and see what you're doing and connect with you?
Yeah, easiest way, LinkedIn, Peter Hopwood. Although I do have to say, there's quite a few Peter Hopwoods out there, and there was one very quick. I got to tell you this really quickly. Don't choose the Peter Hopwood who lives in Amersham, because that's not me, and he doesn't look like me. Although we linked up on LinkedIn not so long ago, and we were just chatting, and we, the same surname, nothing to do with me at all. But I just asked him, about where was his grandmother, where does his grandparents live, and we actually found out that his grandmother lived in the same place as my grandmother. His grandfather lived in the same place as my grandfather. They both had the same names, and it turned out he's my cousin.
Wow.
And the crazy thing is, my dad and his dad both called their sons Peter Hopwood.
Isn't
And
that funny?
isn't that crazy? And he lived not too far. My father, and I think his uncle, they had a disagreement, and they, as families do sometimes, don't sort of live apart and don't come together, which is what happened with my father's family, which is okay. But so interesting now, 47 years later, I find, by random, and I could have clicked on any Peter Hopwood. This guy, I looked at him, he seemed okay, seemed like a nice guy. Clicked on it and found out it's actually my cousin. So when you click on Peter Hopwood, not the
make
Peter
sure
Hopwood,
it's the right one.
if you do, and he links up with you, say, I listened to a show with John and Peter, your cousin. He can help you with speaking ideas, but the other one that looks like me is me. Link up there, and you never know when we might need each other. Me and John, we do a lot of the same things, helping people really to share their messages in the right way. So link up with me, and if you think I can help you in some way, reach out and let's start a conversation.
Great. And please do make sure you connect with the right Peter Hopwood. I have similar issues, Peter. You can imagine with a name like John Ball, it's not the most uncommon.
Johnny Ball.
I often tell people that I'm related to Johnny and Zoe and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not.
What was the show in the 80s?
Oh, Think of a Number. That was
Think
Johnny
of a Number.
So you can imagine the fun I had growing up with that name. So
I guess there's like so many John Balls, but not so many in Spain.
No, thankfully.
That would be weird if there were.
It would. More Juans and Juan Balota here. Peter, it's been a real pleasure speaking to you. Definitely we'll hook up again for a show and do some talk about communication in the hospitality industry. That'd be fantastic. Thank you for everything you shared today, for your insights and your knowledge into TED and TEDx speeches and other stuff besides. It's been a real pleasure chatting to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, John, and I hope we can do this again sometime.
We will. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to like and subscribe to the show. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. It really helps. Why not grab yourself a copy of the Last Minute Presentation Checklist? If you want yours, visit presentinfluence.com and follow the download links. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, or you know someone who would, or you're interested in sponsoring the show or finding out more about presentation skills, please contact me, John at presentinfluence.com. You can find me on Twitter at John A. Ball, or on Facebook. Join the group Speaking Influence and come and find out more, as well as getting daily content from me and updates on all the latest trainings and courses available. Also, check out my new podcast, Points of Change, all about life transformation and the people who make that happen. Lots of great conversations going on there, available on all good podcast players. Have an incredible week and join us again next time on Speaking of Influence.